The Vision and his newly created family are just as intelligent, if not more so, than us lowly humans. The only real distinction between the two is the way they operate and thrive versus how we go about our daily lives. So why is it that, as evidenced by Tom King's run on the character, people are still terrified by the android? Hello and welcome to the show with Issues. I'm Auram, and the issue on the table today is all about Vision, so for those uninformed, let's do a quick recap of the famous android's origin and history. Hank Pym, then Ant-Man, was working on an artificial intelligence that would come to be known as the classic Avengers villain Ultron. The newly sentient AI is actually the one responsible for Vision's creation. After being beaten by the Avengers for a good while, Ultron decided to change tactics and create his own android, using the brainwaves of Wonder Man and body of the original Human Torch, his vision of a perfect being. Ultron sent Vision to lure the Avengers into a death trap, but because of his exposure to the mighty defenders of Earth, Vision realized the error of his ways and asked to join the Avengers, which he soon did. Of course, there were years of shenanigans surrounding the character, with him dying, being resurrected, marrying and having children with Scarlet Witch, and even taking over the world apparently, but all of that eventually led to 2015's Vision by the amazing Tom King, which is what we'll be focusing on for this video, so spoilers for that. Sometime before this series began, in the Avengers Zero issue, Vision decided to purge all emotions associated with his past memories so that his systems could run smoother. This gave Vision the clarity he needed to decide that he should start a family to further pursue his humanity. He first created his wife Virginia from the brainwaves of his ex-wife Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch. Then Vision created Vin and Viv, Virginia and Vision's children, from a combination of the two parents' brainwaves. They all moved into a house on 616 Hickory Branch Lane in Arlington, Virginia, and chaos began to ensue. The Visions were almost immediately met with disgust by their neighbors, and even those who were nice to the family of synthezoids still showed apprehension when interacting. But it didn't stop there. The family's mental state started to deteriorate over time, especially Virginia's, leading to the neighborhood being more and more terrified. The Grim Reaper, Wonder Man's brother, showed up on their doorstep one day and was murdered by Virginia, with Vin and Viv bearing witness. This started a snowball effect, with Vin almost killing Viv's lab partner, who later died at the hands of Virginia, causing Viv to slip into depression, among many other things. And of course, Virginia just became increasingly more insane. Now, the series isn't over yet, but after the handful of issues that are currently out, a lot has happened to make you afraid of this family. It raises the question though, are we afraid of the Visions because of their actions or because of their being androids? If all of these events played out the same way, but with a regular group of humans, would this book be as terrifying? I'd be willing to bet it's because they're androids. Here's why. Vision has always been sort of an outcast. He's always been not quite human, and this scares people. Just look at how the neighborhood was already cautious with the Visions when they first moved in. There's something hardwired in their brains to stay away from these synthezoids. This is commonly referred to as the Uncanny Valley. The Uncanny Valley is a term coined by robotics professor Masahiro Mori in 1970 and is largely used to describe the theoretical dip in likability that a human expresses when encountering a robot that is not quite human looking. If that sounds confusing, look at these two images. This one is super cute. You trust this guy immediately, but this one is creepy and just somewhat off. You probably wouldn't want to be anywhere near it. It disarms you to see something that looks human, but isn't. It makes you question if what you're seeing is real. This is what the Uncanny Valley is describing. There is, of course, the other side of the valley, where the robot becomes so indistinguishable from a human that you no longer feel uneasy around it. This can somewhat be seen in today's video games and CGI work. The Hulk looked way creepier in Ang Lee's film compared to how he's looking today. He escaped the Uncanny Valley. In fact, special effects have gotten so good today that in Age of Ultron they used CG to make Paul Bettany's Vision look less human. Some have also debated that the Uncanny Valley is non-existent. It is currently still just scientific theory, not fact, mostly because it's a very subjective idea that always brings back varying results. That's not to say it has no evidence backing it up though. There has been a lot of research done on this subject, so let's assume for the sake of this video that this is a real phenomenon that occurs in humans and dive into why it happens. One such reason for the Uncanny Valley is what's known as mismatch. Humans inherently seek patterns in things. It makes us feel safer, so when we see a robot do something that doesn't match up with what we expected it to do, it creates an alarming sense of unease. An example of this would be how Virginia sometimes randomly repeats words or gets stuck in a loop of her own speech. We're expecting her to finish her sentence, but she doesn't, and it terrifies us. Another type of mismatch would be through facial expressions or body movements. Oftentimes, androids are depicted as having no emotion. They're lifeless while doing things. This isn't how humans operate. If you're able to truthfully talk about murdering someone casually with a blank expression on your face, you might be labeled a sociopath. This could be considered the norm for a member of the Vision family. Going back to Age of Ultron, remember when Vision was being born? In that entire scene, he had this blank, almost curious expression on his face. He declares,
"I'm not Ultron. I'm not Jarvis. I am."
And then goes on to explain his motives with almost no emotion.
Maybe I am a monster. I don't think I'd know if I were one.
Mismatch is also heavily used in today's horror films. That's why you often see demons or ghosts or whatever move very quickly and randomly. Humans expect very methodical movement, and demons don't like this, apparently. Another reason for the Uncanny Valley phenomenon is whether or not we think the subject can sense things or has the power to think for itself. This is why artificial intelligences are used so heavily in horror or as fear devices. A living computer goes against everything that humans currently know. We fear a robot uprising, however silly that may sound. That's the thing though, isn't it? We're so upset by these uncanny beings because they don't match up with what humans currently understand. However, as technology continues to evolve, we shouldn't be able to discern the difference between human and robot. That's what the Valley proposes. As things get more human-like, the distinction between human and robot becomes less obvious, thus being more comfortable. Vision hasn't quite reached this point of no discern, though. He still has pink skin and operates very much like a machine. However, Dr. Angela Tinwell, one of the lead scientists behind the Uncanny Valley theory, proposes that the idea of technology becoming indiscernible from humans is impossible because of the existence of an uncanny wall. The Uncanny Wall states that as technology evolves, humans will also evolve to accommodate this change. Our senses will become heightened, and we'll be able to more accurately tell the difference between human and robot. This wall is seemingly non-existent in the Marvel Universe, however, because of life model decoys, or LMDs. LMDs look and act just like us. They're the same in every way except for them not actually being human. If the Uncanny Wall did exist, every human on the planet would be able to know immediately that the person they're talking to is an LMD, or at least not human. Fury, for example, had thousands of LMD copies of his younger self, and no one was the wiser. So at the end of the day, what does this mean for the Visions? Will there be a time where humans just inherently accept them and are not put off by their being a synthezoid immediately? Probably not. Humans inherently feel safer around other humans. If you're put into a room with Vision, or any intelligent non-human being really, you will feel uneasy, no matter what. One might even immediately stereotype them as a threat simply because they look different than you. It's how the human brain is wired. Sure, after a while spending time with Vision, his state as an android might become a non-issue, and you'd be two best friends. And hey, maybe the Uncanny Wall doesn't exist, and later generations will have no qualm with robots, androids, or anything else that falls in that category. We can all live in a perfect world where everyone is treated equally regardless of differing physical traits. But even if we eventually accept Vision's physical traits, does that make him a person? What about all the other things that make us us? What about emotions, souls, love?
Hey, I'm gonna borrow this. Hi, I'm Scott from NerdSync. You know me, I think. I'm actually doing a video right now today about Vision and what it means to be a person and whether or not androids qualify. Does Vision have the capacity to show love? Is that only a human characteristic? And what about minds and souls? Does he have one of those? Do we? I don't know, but we're gonna go find out over on my channel, NerdSync, right now. Link in the description, I assume. Okay.
Enough of whatever that was, though. What's your opinion on this? Do you think that Tom King's Vision series would be as scary if the characters were simply human? Or the larger question here, do you think that the anger and apprehension toward the Visions is justified? Let's talk about it all in the comments. That all being said, make sure to subscribe before you head out so you don't miss out on anything I upload every Saturday and every other Wednesday. And of course, thank you so much for watching. Next time I put an extra lock on my door, because this guy just keeps coming in here for some— No! I don't—